Greetings and salutations, friends and family. It is now 1 minute to 12, and we are delighted that we are going to be spending some time today reflecting on the commemoration of UN Interfaith Harmony Week or World Interfaith Harmony Week. I have really loved this work. I've been doing it since what, 2021, I believe, when we began work around COVID and everybody was on lockdown and people were wondering, is the world coming to an end? And in that time, it was this recognition began in 2019. So it's really recent. And so most of us didn't even know about it. But somehow, in looking up for what the UN was doing, we came across World Interfaith Harmony Week. And since then, I have been engaged, certainly in trying to reach out to people, do events from time to time. And here we are today celebrating 2024 World Interfaith Harmony Week. It's 12 p.m. on the hour, and we are going to be joined in this session by some experts, Dr.D.K.Hari Candidate and Dr.D.K.Hema Candidate. And let me just say again, there's a song I sing in our chapel, Taco Metaphysical Chapel. It goes, "We all come from the mother, and to her we shall return, like a drop of rain flowing in the ocean." The fact is, we all come from one God, and to him or her we shall return, like a spike of fire, reaching for the open sky. We all come from one, and to one we shall return. And so, as we consider this moment of contemplation, this next couple hours, we're talking to different people. I recognize that we are interbeing. We're an interdependent species. None of us grow our own food or weave our own fabric. And so we greet you in the spirit of Ubuntu, recognizing that I am because you are, and acknowledging that where I sit in Silver Spring, Maryland, on the North American continent, it was first settled by people from the tribe of I'm going to have to figure out how to get my phone off. I thought I turned it off. I don't know why it's still ringing. Let me just make sure I do that before we get fully into this. Yes, here we are. We are let me restart that because it's very important. Land acknowledgement is a practice that has been started in recent years. And the fact is, we want to be aware where we are, that all of us are living on borrowed land in some way, certainly us in North America. We didn't come here, we were people before we came here. And where I am in Silver Spring, Maryland, on this continent, it was first settled by the Nakochank tribe, which is a part of the confederation known as the Piscataway Chiefdom. And many indigenous peoples and nations across the world have always had a relationship with the divine. We get a sense that we want to believe that it's only people who are, quote unquote, written knowledge and written language who have a relationship with the divine, but that's not the case. But let me go straight into it. We are excited to, again, today, February the 5th, we're midway through this expression of World Interfaith Week, and I am delighted that we are going to be having conversations on cultivating care for our planet Earth and our cosmos. We recognize the ongoing challenges and the differences we see in our relationship with our faith and what we have in common. And so in this session, again, as I say, I'm delighted to have with us Hari and Hema Candidate, Dr.Hari and Dr.Hema Candidate, who are leading lights in Indian civilization, philosophy, history, and cosmology. And I am going to say welcome, namaste. Thank you so much for taking my call. We're so delighted to have you. Might I, first of all, commend you on working together as a couple. That's not always easy. And before I begin, help me to pronounce correctly the name of the organization that you have founded. What is that?
BharathGyan.
BharathGyan.
Yes. So if you go to the website, it's BharathGyan.org, and they have a lot of information, and we won't be able to cover all of it. I found them through their work in Hindu University of America, and like I said, they have a long resume, and it will come out as we enter in a conversation. But I want to jump right in because they have so much to share. I want to start with this, first of all. When you think about Hindu philosophy, most of us just know it from a very, yoga and hatha yoga at that. People don't even know that there's things beyond hatha yoga. Could you just very quickly just walk us through sort of a framing of how the Hindu philosophy cosmology is shaped before we get into the specifics about care for the planet?
First of all, thank you so much for having us here on this program. It's a pleasure to be here and to interact with you for the last couple of days. You use the word yoga. The word yoga, while people look at it as movement, asanas, exercise, stretching, all that, but the word yoga itself means union. The English word union, because it is coming together. It's coming together of the body, the mind, breath. All three coming together in unison. That's what yoga is all about. It's bring all to one state, one plane.
And the whole of Hindu philosophy actually stresses on union. So it is either you find it in terms of union by yoga, or union in time, which is yoga, which is all about planetary motions and they coming in alignment, or yojana, which is ideas and the goal coming in alignment. So the process, the steps you take and the goal coming in alignment. So the whole Hindu philosophy is about aligning with your intrinsic, innate character of being a human, and aligning with the larger cycles, which we call Rita. Rita is order. And the English word rhythm and Rita, actually, they gel very well. So it is to be in harmony, in consonance with nature, the order in nature. Actually, Hinduism believes that it's not chaos, there is order everywhere. So it's this order that we respect.
There is certainly order in the fact that, the sun is regular and it's coming out.
Absolutely.
And the fact that we're talking about the age of the Anthropocene, what we're concerned about is that our human activity is beginning to sort of shake the natural order, and Mother Earth is saying, wait a minute, this can't work. I'm going to throw you off. I like to tell people, we'll be gone and the cockroaches will still be here unless we shape up. So we're talking about care for our planet and care for our cosmos. Let me just tell you the why and tell everybody the why. When I think about the fact that COVID really threw me into a tailspin, and I thought about all the ways in which we have now arrived as what one of the authors called Homo sapien, behaving as God, right? So we're able to clone things. We're able to create new species with synthetic biology. We're able to create artificial intelligence, which is fast. People are worried that the singularity is coming down the stream. Climate change is an ever-present fear and worry. And because of that, we're concerned that, wait a minute, we're hastening the Earth's orderly cycle of ages, right? And now in Indian philosophy, we talk about yugas. So we're hastening this orderly cycle to our detriment. So when we talk about care for our planet, I wanted to start us off by telling us about what does Hindu philosophy or cosmology teach us about order in terms of our relationship as stewards, if you will, in ensuring this divine harmony of Earth is, I guess, cultivated or cared for. I mean, my question is a little bit off, but you know where I'm trying to go with this.
See, one of the most beautiful ideas in Hinduism is cyclical, cycles. So if you see Rita or order itself, it means it's a cycle. There is a pattern which is repeating. Repetition means you come back to a starting point, a similar starting point, and you repeat the whole cycle. So this cycle, a cycle should not be cut. And unfortunately, today in all the experiments, especially with modifications that we are doing, in avarice, we are trying to cut the cycle. We are cutting the regenerative nature. So fundamentally, we are creating things which cannot sustain on their own, which need outside intervention to be sustained. And that is where the problem lies. So if you can, so self-regeneration, the art of progeny, be it man or seed or animal or plant or whatever, progeny,
even the solar system by itself, it should create. So that is self-generative is a principle of nature. But what we do is we say you or the particle doesn't self-generate, but we induce something from outside. That goes against the ethics of nature. The ethos of what we call Prakriti nature, that's a creative nature itself. That's very important. So intervention can be there. As you say, can be there, but it should allow nature to take over, because nature is far superior to all this that we can do. What we forget is we are all an intrinsic part of nature. That's important. And a statement that I made. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, but so we say this in theory, but the fact remains that we're now doing experiments with seeds. We have a lot of protests over the years with farmers in India about their inability to, quote unquote, replicate their own seeds, having to buy seeds, and fear about control of food security and those things. And then, of course, there's fear not about food security, but if you start tampering with the seeds, and we don't know everything there is to know about the relationship between one plant to the next. There's a lot of fear around how the forests of trees speak to each other. We just don't understand a lot. So in terms of teaching, because we want to get down to not just the theory of it, when you're teaching from the temple, from the pews, this conversation today is about how do we get people of faith to be intentional in thinking about their politics of their faith, and make sure that they're understanding that the scriptures that, or the philosophy that guided that ancient idea may not have specified AI and synthetic biology, right? But how do we interpret this ethical behavior around things like AI and synthetic biology and all the other pollutions, as you name it, of our sea or ocean, our space? We're going to get to space, but let's start with the ocean, because that's a big thing that we all share.
See, actually, we have, very interestingly, our ancient literature, one major chunk of it is called the Purana, which means, and these contain the stories, the legends of the past, of events that have happened in the past with various kings and various generations and so on. And they keep carrying on across generations and millennia. But the word Purana over there, Purana literally actually means old. But the way it is defined is, it is old yet new, meaning it's evolving and is relevant for present times. So applicable for present times. So, and we have had this tradition that people keep telling this, narrating this Purana during various festivals, celebrations in temples, and various other social gatherings and so on. These kind of Purana legends are narrated, and they are narrated as a commentary by people of present times. And they take care to elaborate, to contextualize it, contemporize it. And these people also keep themselves abreast. So even though they may be in the religious attire and so on and traditional looking, they do also keep, especially in recent times with advancements in science, many of them, if you really see, are present day engineers, lawyers, and whatever professionals who have also taken on to this activity. So they do keep themselves abreast. And this is one way of spreading this message around, and bringing in the aspect. And Puranas carry these lessons. See, the same thing may not be applicable, but the lesson or the wisdom with which events were handled. After all, humanity and human nature hasn't changed. And so those lessons hold good. And it is these people who kind of bring it around, and it'll be very important to educate them as we go along too.
For we have a saying in English that history repeats itself.
Ah.
So even though it may be in the past, but if you don't know, understand the significance, the ethical values of the ethos in it, it will repeat itself and only bring more damage to us in the present. So we should understand how we have, in the rhythm of movement of things, how we have sort of come through it. And that would be whole practical life lessons for us in applicability.
Question, I'm going to go back. There's one of those put on the table. When you say old, because I want everybody to understand what old is in the Indian philosophy. I mean, old in this part of the world is maybe 500 years or 1,000 years. Christianity, because we work with a date, our current world date is quote unquote 2,000 years after the death of Christ, quote unquote. And then sometimes people who study, Egyptology, the pharaohs, etc., they might think about those. But just remind us, if you will, because your study, your program, the teachings that you're doing start at the quote unquote beginning, if we can ever know the beginning. We don't really know the beginning, but how far back does your website go? Because I want people to, after this is over and when you're sharing it, go back to your site, BharathGyan, to sort of get some of your teachings in more depth.
Sure.
It's a very relevant and a good question, because as you said, the different civilizations, different societies have different time scales which are brought forth in the
memory
of memory. In the Hindu civilization, that's Indian civilization, our civilization knowledge clearly goes back to probably 5,000 years old, 6,000 years old, 7,000 years old, 8,000 years old, and more. So for us, when you say ancient, it is at least 5,000 years
and more.
And more, 6,000. So for us, traveling back 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years is not such a great thing in our thought process, because we do it very naturally, because all this knowledge has come down to us across 5, 6, 7, 8 millennia. So that is the beauty of this particular land, this civilization, the society, this knowledge base on which this religion is also what we today call Hinduism.
Yes. And I want to say or ask a question to come back to the present time now. We're talking about this notion of how do we talk about these modern ideas in the context of our faith so that we're able to grapple with, because many people are becoming stressed out. Things are moving so fast. Rapid, it's called future shock, when we can't absorb the rate of change of the future. And so climate change is one thing that's in your face, but things like AI is really making people, wobble, because what does it mean now to be educated? And how, back in our day, we had to learn, things by rote. We went to engineering school back in the days when you had a computer was a big room with a big machine. From your perspective about, again, in the temples, in how in the schools that are religious schools in India, how are they teaching people to be fully human in an era of the synthetic human, if that makes sense to you? The artificial human.
Good point you raised. See, when you use the right word, future shock, obviously it was a very famous book 40 years ago by Alvin Toffler. It took America by storm then, and also we have also had opportunity to read that book 40 years ago, and it's had an impact all over. That's a book that obviously, and you mentioned about climate change. See, climate change has actually got two components to it. One is at the micro level, other is the macro level. It's at the micro level that we are degenerating our own space in space, which is Earth. At the same time, at the macro level, we should also realize that the Earth, which is inclined on its axis, is not at a particular incline alone. That incline itself keeps on oscillating over a period of 27,000 years, which is called the Milankovitch cycle. It's named after Serbian, East European. So it's called Milankovitch cycle. So when that happens, global warming and global cooling constantly keeps happening as the axis keeps constantly slightly changing, like how you spin a curved ball in baseball. It's just like that. Earth is also wobbling. So that creates both. So while the macro level of the Earth wobble over a 27,000 year period, we cannot do anything about it. We've got to live with it. That's how the oceans drop and rise. That's a constant factor. The ice caps keep building up and shrinking. That happens. So that humans can hardly do anything about it because we are part of it. We are a component of the Earth. Whereas the micro scale, certainly, yes, we are adding to our woes.
Hastening it.
Hastening it, yes. That is there. And this is what is this also creating a sense of desperation, this hastening in us trying to create what you call synthetic biology and all that. So because we are looking for various aspects to sort of overcome it without realizing that we need to respect our Mother Earth, and we instantly have only one Mother Earth. We don't have any other place to go. So as yet, probably a few centuries later, we may have. I said as yet. So we should till then, till those generations come up, probably 3, 4, 5 generations later, we may have it. But again, it's all very, as I said, cyclical. That's a beauty. And there's a rhythm to the cycle. That's what our civilization philosophy brings forth. And for each time frame, you have to live according to that time frame, that knowledge frame. And you have to live in synchronization with that time frame and knowledge frame. Because if we do not live in sync S, Y, and C with that time frame and that knowledge frame, we will sink S, I, and K. It's very important to live in S, Y, and C.
But at the same time, therefore, this has been a continuous civilization which has been living for so many thousands of years, and therefore we have had this memory, continued memory. This has been made possible because of some of the values that have been propagated by the way of life, if you will, more than just religion alone. And that has been to live in a very tempered manner, in a controlled manner. And that has far reaching effects than trying to work solutions, come up with solutions, create problems and try to come up with solutions. In fact, that is the principle of our whole medical system itself. Our indigenous medicine system, which is Ayurveda, is more preventive. I mean, the focus is more on preventive. Of course, we do have a lot of curative, but the idea is to prevent than allow yourself to get afflicted and then sit and work on cures. So the dharmic way of life, and that is what dharma is all about. It is to be in synchronization with nature, empathize with nature, and therefore live your life accordingly in a very controlled manner.
Well,
See, you have to live with the flow of things.
I think we certainly are out of control, especially when you think about some of the geoengineering ideas that are out there, which are very scary. And one of the ones that really threw me for a loop was when I saw an article. I hope it has kind of died a natural death. There was an article posted that there was a city in China that planned to put up an artificial moon. And the artificial moon was to reflect light so that they wouldn't have to change all these light bulbs. And I thought to myself, okay, I really hope this dies a natural death, because don't they understand that we need night? We actually need dark. Don't we understand that there are insects, that there are vectors, that there are viruses, bacteria that require the rhythm of that night and day, and over millennium have kind of, morphed into kind of living in harmony? What if we disrupt that? And I bring it up because as we go into space exploration, I was very excited when I saw that India made it the coveted race for space, race for the moon. was run by India, and we see where India's most recently joined the Artemis Accords. My story on that was, they must have Vedic astrology to get there first. So help us understand, in terms of a practicing Hindu faith person, how does Vedic astrology impact a sort of life? And then is it something that a scientist would contemplate using, or is like two completely different spheres of knowledge?
Actually, very interestingly, you use the word astrology. See, in India, we have one terminology which we call as Jyotisha, which means it is the science of all bodies emitting light. Jyoti means light, and it is that. And astronomy, and we have very clearly differentiated between astronomy and astrology. Astronomy is all about all the objects in the celestial sphere, in the sky, that you can see, and all of that which is there, illumining bodies.
It's all the illumined bodies. Even within that, we have two sections. One is called the science of illumined bodies, which is called Siddhanta Jyotisha. The other is the mathematical calculations in all these illumined bodies. We call it as Ganita Jyotisha.
That is mathematical astronomy. And astrology, we have very clearly segregated as that which is to do with motions in the zodiac belt. So it is to do with just the planets alone, planets and the moon. And so that is astrology. So the knowledge system had very clear understanding of this. And a little while ago, you said about, oh, we cannot know about the start of time or beginning of time. Just something here we would like to let you know about the astronomy that is there in the Hindu system. It actually calculates, I mean, every practicing Hindu, even today, before we commence anything, we say something which is called sankalpa. So kalpa means to create, and sam means good. So to create something good, to look forward to a good outcome. And that sankalpa also means a very good intention, because it's always anything to happen has to first start with a good intention. Intention is the starting point. And to do that, we recite something to mark the time when this intention is being born in you. And marking of the time starts with the Big Bang. It starts with this instant of the Big Bang. And from there, the time is counted in cycles, many large cycles. They keep telescoping down. And the beauty is, at one point, it transcends from space and from time and comes into space, then goes back into time. So it straddles.
Geography there. Actually, it comes down to geography. So it is actually a space-time continuum to geo-astral positioning. And we do this every day in our life. That's what we do. And as she said beautifully, it telescopes from the moment of the Big Bang. And what we're actually doing is we're calculating the elapsed time.
From the start of the creation. So we can actually, I
want to pause there and kind of go back and try and make sure I understand something. So paraphrasing it, because there's so much content and have to unpack it a little bit. So you're saying that in the Hindu philosophy, first of all, astronomy and astrology are not totally separate. They're sort of like this. They're separate but together. In other words,
yes,
intertwined.
Right. So that because you are human, there is the study of the medical impact, or the impact on the astronomy on you, the human cycle, and
it's
living and living. So that's human, animals, plants, whatever. The living,
yes,
right?
Earthlings. We call them earthlings.
All earthlings. We call them earthlings. All earthlings.
All earthlings, which include the non-human earthlings, right? That's the first thing. So the first thing to understand then is that from your philosophy, it's not only humans which are earthly. That's good too. If we take away nothing else from today, I'm going to take away that. Because that is where it starts, because that begins to talk about this concept of ethics, and this is probably where you see people who are Jain, for example, they will not even swallow an insect because it's like it's hurting another earthling, another life form. So that's one person. So here we are on the cusp of space travel. And one of my real concerns is looking at it from a Western perspective. I'm from Jamaica. I grew up in a Christian church. I practice in an interfaith way. So I consider myself an interfaith Christian, whatever that means. But to me, it means that people are free to do whatever they want. I'm not going to run around the world trying to convert anybody, because I like to say we cannot count the grains of sand. We cannot count the blades of grass. We cannot even count all the stars in an ever-expanding universe. So who are we to define God when God has created all this diversity? So that's kind of my philosophy of how I practice. Now, we are now talking about setting up humans on the moon in a permanent base, one, as well as having people circumvent the moon all the time, like how we do the ISS now circumvent Earth. So we're talking about space sustainability. We're talking about issues of space debris, space junk. There's so much. How does this idea come? I mean, our Indian space enthusiasts and advocates who are Hindu, because I know India has, a lot of different religions living side by side. But how do those who are Hindu, who are also working in space, is there a conversation happening in India right now about some of these ancient ethics that must help us think about how do we want to work in space? How are we going to make decisions about what is ethically responsible and spiritually responsible when we start, quote unquote, having people living on the moon? Your thoughts?
See, living on the moon or living on other planets or traveling to other planets is not against the Hindu thought.
Okay.
And it is well within the Hindu thought. Yes, you can have travel beyond Earth. And we see if we have two very clear concepts. If you look at it, one is we say that this Earth, all of solar system and the galaxy and beyond that multiple galaxies and universe, all is made up of the special five. That is Prapancha. So that's what we call universe in English language. It is called actually that which is made up of the special five. That's what we call
the five primordial elements.
Five primordial elements. And the fifth of it is space.
Or first.
The first of it is space. Actually, the fifth is Earth. Last is Earth. Earth comes a fifth. The first is space, in which we also have a saying that this Earth that we live in is part of that sky. So it's not that sky is separate, Earth is separate. No, this Earth itself is a minuscule speck in that sky. We are, after all, but a part of that. You know the famous photograph that the Voyager shuttle took when it turned around one last time after it crossed Uranus, looked at that blue dot. That is Earth. So it's obvious that modern science also brings out the point that after all, this is just one speck in all of the cosmos, which is very mathematical. And in that, so time travel or space travel is well in consonance with the Hindu thought and much accepted. And yes, it's with our Puranic literature, which you spoke about a few minutes back, has more than a few stories on travel beyond Earth and how it's been happened. So what we are having in this current cycle of Earth life is one cycle. So that's why we repeat the word cycle, because some thoughts have a linear thought, whereas a Hindu thought is very cyclical. It's a non-linear cyclical thought, which in our Hindu philosophy, we call it Kala Chakra. Chakra means cycle, Kala means time. That time itself is a cycle. And in this, and each short span looks straight to us, but actually it's a big cycle, huge cycle, which makes up many millennia, many thousand years. And in that, probably they may have been time travel earlier. That's why if you look at the earlier statement by Carl Sagan, a scientist from USA, he had mentioned that the Hindu cosmology, though it looks large, actually is in consonance with present day science, the time span, the elapsed time. It's beautifully brought that statement out, Carl Sagan, who lived a couple of decades ago.
So like I mentioned, we do this time calculation. We narrate our calendar. Our Hindu calendar actually goes all the way from the start of creation, and you go through so many cycles of time. Some of the cycles there is no earth. In some of the cycles there is no sun because you have exceeded the life of the sun, the life of the earth. So these kind of thoughts are very common. I mean, we are very easily able to grapple with this idea.
Wow.
But your question on responsibility is something very different.
Right.
And
that's really what I want to talk about, because I am active in many conversations about space ethics. I have been in conferences where I've heard people say the moon is up there doing nothing, so we ought to go and just mine the moon. And I'm like, first of all, if the moon wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. We'd be roasted or toasted. So if the moon shifts, we hear people talking about terraforming Mars, or the most recent one was putting the remains of humans on the moon, which for many cultures that is like desecrating. So we have to really have a conversation as people of faith, because the celestial bodies for many people were always considered the abode of the gods, right? Back in the day, when people didn't contemplate going physically. I mean, obviously people who were spiritual could always travel through time and space with their, mind. But how is this, when you are seeing what's happening in India on the ground, are you seeing pockets of, let's say, space ethicists come up and talk about this? Are they bringing in the faith community in it, or is it just science and ethics over here, and then practicing faith Hindu people over here? How is that emerging?
See, moon, as you said, some people say, you made a mention, some people say moon, why is it there? It's a waste. No, moon is absolutely essential, because if not for the moon, we will not be here on earth.
Exactly.
Because moon is what gives us our fertility cycle. Moon has a 28-day cycle, very clearly, obviously. And we humans, the ladies, the women, the Shakti, the energy of this earth, they also have a 28-day cycle. It's in synchronous with the moon cycle. That's a fertility cycle. The plant life cycle is also in synchronization with that. Agriculture is done in synchronization with that. In most traditional agricultural practices, bees have that, follow that cycle. Otherwise, there's no pollination, there's no food production, there's no botany, there's no plant life. So bees follow that cycle.
In fact, the sap in plant is connected with Soma, the moon.
The moon cycle.
And so it's absolutely essential for having, the moon is essential. And therefore, if you are really looking at landing and stepping on the moon and wanting to live there, we have to respect the moon for what it is. And just to give you an example of how it would relate, in Hindu thought, we call if you look at India, you would know that there are so many diverse groups having different cultural practices, variations in the cuisine, in their attire, in their languages, and so many different religion, even though you call it Hinduism, but there are many different gods and different ways of
divinities
and so on. So much of diversity, but yet all Indians will say they are from one culture, one civilizational culture, which is called Bharatiya culture. So how does this happen? The idea this happens, and the reason I'm trying to tell this as an example is so that the same idea can be carried forward when we look at living, expanding, and living in other parts of the space. See, we have something called a word called achar. Achar means practices.
ACHA?
Yeah, ACHAR. 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 Achar which means habits, practices, the way you live, the way you do things. Now, a next step is something called Desachar. D-E-S-A, Achar. Desa means the region, the land where you're living. So, Desachar means those practices that you adopt because you are living in a certain topography, because you are living in a land which is either cold or hot or has rivers, in it, or is a dry land. So depending on the land you're living, your food habits and your other cultural, your attire, cuisine, everything you adapt according to the land. So that is called desachar. And
For example, when you live in Jamaica, your desachar is attuned to a tropical climate of Jamaica. But when you live in New York, your practice habits are attuned to the climate, the topography, the hydrology of New York. When you go live further north in Canada, beyond the Hudson River, that again changes. So all this is based on that. So you have to adapt and live in synchronization with the place that you live in. So that is important.
over and above this, what we call as culture, the word for culture is kalachar. So both etymologically and phonetically, semantically, they all have a similar sound and word. Now, if you look at it, so where do you have this culture? What is uniting all the people in India? The idea which is uniting, it's an idea that actually unites all the people of India. And that is to respect each other's desachar. So if we go to somewhere in the north, you don't look down upon somebody else's custom. So you accept, you respect, and when you go there, you live as per that. You are meant to live as per that. So that is kalachar. So the vichar, that means it's an idea.
Vichar is idea.
But
So
let me ask you, I'm gonna stop you right here because that is still bounded by an existence that already pre-exists. We're talking about having to make decisions about how we create a human city, village on the moon. So, for example, you have something called the Moon Village Association, right? We have the Artemis Accords, and India is now a member. What rules are going to guide that space? Clearly, we have to bring our food, we have to bring our water, and we're gonna go. If it's an Indian astronaut, there'll be a Saudi astronaut, there'll be a Western astronaut. We have so many things to work out, including.
yes.
So she's coming to that point.
Right. So please help us get to this question because we're coming. Actually, we only have like 8 minutes, and I really want to get some of this done. Help us
Yes.
get to, from your perspective, how can people like yourself be more visible and intentional in the space ethics or the space sustainability community so that we get some new ideas on the table? Right now, most of the conversations are being governed by Western philosophy and Christian philosophy.
Yeah. So you want to say?
So when we go to the moon or to Mars or wherever we want to go, so there is a local desachar which you will have to adapt, evolve, and live according to that. We cannot take an idea that is on Earth and take it there to a next terrestrial body in the solar system or beyond the solar system. We have to know that you have to form rules in accordance with that place. When we have to form rules in accordance between Jamaica and New York, which is after all 1,000 kilometers or just a couple of thousand kilometers away, miles away. In the case of America, you got calculated miles. But when you go that far away, it's not just the topography, hydrology, everything changes. So you have to readapt and reorient, recalibrate the rules, laws, and the ways of living.
And one of the fundamental rule would be to not colonize in that sense. So you are not going to the moon or Mars because Mars has got this wealth and you're going to bring it back to the earth and so that you can others earth or you yourself can live comfortably. That idea or spirit of colonization is an absolute no-no. You are
Right.
going there to live in Mars and be a citizen of Mars, live in Mars as Martians would do.
There
Like
was
you
a
say, live in
marathon.
Rome.
And I want to ask that question because one of the conferences I was at last year, we're talking about creating a metaversian, quote unquote, law court to practice what the laws will be about owning land on Mars. So I said, there is no land on Mars. And I said, that's what you mean. I said, there is surface area, but we cannot call it land. We may need to either go back to indigenous times and find a different word, because land in a Western structure means that it can be owned. So how are we going to, again, have a multicultural, inclusive conversation across faiths? I am talking about having this working group, this community of practice, and what this whole conversation is for now is to begin to put together a community of practice globally to talk about a future where we interfaith covenant on the cosmos. So as we kind of run to a close, what are your thoughts about such a thing, an interfaith covenant on the cosmos? And what are some of the ancient words that don't exist in English and ideas that we might want to think about bringing up and having these conversations right there in India, where I hope to come?
You're certainly welcome. So, see, the idea of colonization,
yeah,
actually across many continents has created a lot of misery in the places where you're gone. And it's had its whiplash, backlash in the people who colonized too over centuries. It's happened now. So we are facing it. So similarly, when you go to newer territories, say beyond Earth, the same concept of colonization, which has not gone well through history, which we see very clearly, we should not repeat the same mistake. This is what the idea of when she said Purana about half an hour ago. We learn it because we should not repeat the same errors. Colonization created a lot of miseries across different lands. And we are facing its whiplash now, backlash now. Colonization across planets is going to create the same whiplash, but probably much faster, because the distances are longer and that. So sitting here to form laws for another planet would not actually hold water. What we'll have to do is form for the respective ones based on their needs. What you go and do there. That's why she brought in the idea of something called habit, practice, which is called achar, and something is called desachar, which is there intrinsic to Hindu philosophy. Because we have a concept which is diametrically opposite to the idea of colonization, which came out of Europe in the Renaissance period and the post-Renaissance period over the last 4 or 5 centuries. We have the concept in Hindu thought. It's called Krinvanto Vishwam Aryam, meaning wherever you go and do good there. It's not to go loot and plunder and divest somebody else of their natural resources, but go and do good there. When you go out to seek beyond your shores, it may be the naval shores or maritime shores, or it could be the astral shores. The fundamental underlying ethos is wherever you go and do good there.
Good for that place.
Where you go, to make your new home.
Not good for yourself or your home back.
No, individual is just is a component of it. You go do good there. That's a very underlying ethos. So when Indians went millennia ago to sort of Southeast Asia, East Africa, they went to Malaysia, Singapore, Cambodia, all over Bali, Indonesia, all of there. You see, while they travel constantly all over there, it was not to loot over the last few millennia, but to go and do good there, wherever they went to by ship over millennia. So that is the underlying principle. It's called, I repeat the word again, the phrase again rather. It's called Krinvanto Vishwam Aryam, meaning let's go do good.
Noble work.
Nobility. Let's spread nobility wherever we go. It's beyond good. Nobility is higher concept, beyond good.
You know, as I'm hearing you and I'm thinking through some of the conversations we're having about mining on the moon, mining Mars. Some people have talked about actually using nuclear energy on Mars to terraform it. And I'm saying to myself, how do we know? Somebody said, well, it's too far away from Earth to matter. And I'm like, but how do you know that? You don't know that if you do explode a neutron bomb on Mars to terraform it, to make it whatever, that it's not going to have repercussions on our planet because we're connected. As you say, we're connected. And so I guess as we come to, and I would like you to just talk about this idea of, do you think that there are people in the Hindu tradition that would be open to having a conversation, a more public conversation about what are the ethics that the Indian Space Agency or the Indian space advocacy groups, Indian space clubs, you know, all these kids that I've seen at conferences coming from India with all their brilliant ideas about, you know, orbits and all this stuff. Where is the conversation for the ethics of the future? Is it, can you, with your leadership already, see this being a intentional part of your coming work? And can we work together to be part of this global community of practice to create this new covenant with the cosmos for all of the world's religions?
Very good point you raised. Thank you. See, the Indian Space Exploration Agency, which you call ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, is only to explore and research. It's got no mandate. It's got no basic concept of going to colonize. That is not there in the document at all in the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO. Its fundamental aim, goal, mandate is only to research and explore and expand its knowledge of science as applicable today. That's what it is. It's not to colonize. There's not one thought of it there at all, because that comes from a very clear, our civilization, philosophical aspect of to seek out, go beyond, seek, get to know more very clearly, because probably it may happen millennia ago, but again do it. Once again, repeat, go do beyond. It's not to control, it's not to divest that place or something, but for us in this life, in this generations, next few generations, to know, seek, expand our knowledge. And the idea of yatra, that is the idea of travel, is very clearly in there in the Hindu thought.
And in fact, the aspiration of present day India is to be a Vishwa Guru, meaning a world leader in thought, a world thought leader. And so to see how so much millennia of knowledge based wisdom, knowledge is different, wisdom is different, and the lessons come to you through all these old legends and Purana and so on. How do you take that and the philosophies? How do you take that and present it to the world to tackle precisely these kind of problems that we are facing today and are likely to face in future? So we are a civilization and a nation who want to position ourselves to be thought leaders and help resolve these kind of problems from our civilizational knowledge base, if you will. And
want to just say thank you so much. We have to leave it there and get ready for our next session. But there's obviously, we're just starting a conversation. There's so much we can learn. I am going to put your link. I think it's Bharath, BharathGyan.org. Right? Am I
.com. .com. .com.
.com. Okay.
Way ago we picked up .com. That time there wasn't
Yeah, just
many
tell me if that's
options.
right. Look if that link is the correct link.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
it is
Yeah.
right. Yes.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
this is again Doctors Hari and Hema Candidate. They are intellectual experts on Indian civilization. That website has a ton of information. And what we are doing today is just revisiting this idea of how will we cultivate care and compassion for our planet and our cosmos from the point of view of various religions. So folks, stand by. We're getting ready to bring up our next speaker. I'm just going to shut down our Facebook and restart so we don't have a overlong thing for anybody to watch and find the information. This segment, again, has begun our conversation with Dr. Hari and Dr. Hema Candidate.